In a hidden room deep within an active volcano, the overlord of the Forbidden Isles hears reports from his spies that Eluin is in disarray. With the failure of its expedition and the loss of so many kings and princes, the land is now racked with political turmoil. The overlord, never one to hesitate, seizes on the chance and sends his biggest invasion force to date. This time his forces land near the jungle in the north. They seek to capture Kara's Tor, but first they will defile its holy water source. The spring that feeds Kara's Tor has been worshipped by the long-lived elves for so long. Its waters have taken on a small amount of mystical properties. In small doses it is beneficial, but prolonged contact, especially near the source, can be fatal. Any who seek to charge through this water best take care. The king of Kara's Tor, Reti, gathers what forces he can, and marches to cut off the invaders. He leads a full regiment of seasoned knights with a chariot in support. The bulk of his forces are a horde of militia spearmen, who lead the local Phoenix Guard, disciples of war, and 2 Magi in the center. Reti has placed all his ranged forces on his left flank. Militia archers, 2 bolt throwers, a dragon, and the rocker collar have been instructed to hold this flank, buying time for the main force to dominate.
Facing off against the militia spearmen, the commanding Dreadlord has sent his most powerful units. A Hydra, a demon, the Imperial Guardsmen, and finally a sorceress leads a regiment of Raptor Knights. On the other side of a small ayat, a lone sorceress is accompanied by 2 spearmen battalions.
But is this all the forces under the Dreadlord's command?
Turn 1. With a blast of arcane energy the battle begins. The sorceress on foot bolsters the spearman and demon with defensive spirits.
In response, the Eluin artillery starts to cut down the opposing spearmen. Even as the brave spearmen continue to advance, trusting in their magical protection, the combined power of the 2 bolt throwers breaks them, and they flee.
Undeterred, the larger spearman battalion advances, not wanting to draw the ire of the Dreadlord in their midst.
Fully believing in the superior ability of Eluin archery, the prince leads the militia bowmen forward, and they launch a devastating volley. To the prince's dismay, many spearmen are saved by a shield spirit. The 2 Eluin Magi combine forces to bless the infantry, lightening their load and giving them an energy boost.
The demon swoops forward, landing on the Holy Springs bifurcation.
Enraged by the sacrilege they are witnessing, the horde of militia spearmen rush forward.
In response, the raptor-riding sorceress leads her forces past the Imperial Guard.
Rocker collar sweep forward, easily outflanking their dark kin. The dragon takes to the skies, eyes fixed upon the advancing spearmen. The weapon master, a survivor of many a battle, senses something is not right. He knows the Dreadlord's ways and their love of ambushes. He turns his disciples to cover the right flank as all the other Eluin forces advance forward. As both army centers rush towards each other, the Dark Elves have taken a point lead, thanks to the demon occupying the bifurcation. Turn 2. Eager to teach the Cockshaw Prince a deadly lesson, the Dreadlord leads her spearmen directly into the militia archers, obliterating them, and then turning the battalion to face the bolt throwers. As the rocker collar sweep around the flank, they spot a lone sorceress in the distance. Firing at max range, they land a fortunate headshot, cutting off any of her accursed plans. Panicking, the bolt thrower crew attempt to cut down the approaching spearmen, to little effect.
The Dreadlord in charge keeps the Hydra leashed for now, as bolt thrower crews continue to attempt to dissuade the spearmen. The results remain depressing.
The demon continues to pervert the holy water, while from the skies a burst of dragon fire blasts the spearman before the dragon attempts to dive past the wall of barbed spear points.
The Dark Elf forces hold position, as the Eluin forces continue to push forward with the cavalry nearly across the creek, and the chariot now free to move at full speed. The next turn will see how the Dark Elves intend to deal with the seemingly overpowered spear horde and flanking forces.
The Dark Elves now lead 2-0.
Turn 3. From behind their Dark Kin's battle line marches a battalion of repeater crossbows, led by a devious Sea Lord. Knowing that they must not let the Eluin cavalry run free, the Raptor Sorceress leads her knights into the Eluin King's forces. The initial impact is handled well by the Eluin, but the Raptors tear into their meal, eliminating the bulk of the foe.
On the other side, the dragon goes for a second swing at the Dark Spearman and Dreadlord. The bolt thrower crews cheer as the dragon burns half of the enemy to a crisp, before realizing the survivors are now sweeping around the dragon, with eyes upon the bolt throwers.
In a critical moment, the repeater crossbow battalion advanced, and immediately darkened the skies above the militia spearmen, chopping down nearly half their number.
The prince amongst the militia spearmen rallies the men to himself, and leads them forward, charging the foul demon. Unfortunately, the discombobulated spearmen stumble and fall in their eagerness, slash panic, and many fall foul of the holy water. The remaining warriors feebly attempt to harm the demon, before the prince leads the survivors back to the 2 holy trees.
Ignoring the pests, the demon charges into the dragon, and in an eruption of visceral violence the 2 giant beasts fight for domination. For the demon, the outcome was never in doubt. For dominance is the demon's way of life. After beheading the young dragon, he turns to face a foe he has enjoyed culling before. The Phoenix Guard.
With the flight of the demon, a Hydra is exposed to the bolt thrower crew, and they launch an optimistic volley.
At the same time, their partner crew are charged by a frenzied Dreadlord. Her spearmen show no mercy, and now they eye up the remaining bolt thrower.
In this darkest of moments, a hero emerges. The Magi of Lightning ignores the demon, crosses the holy water, and the skies discharge lightning strike after strike on the Dreadlord and her spearmen, eradicating the threat. Rocco Collar approaches the bifurcation, spotting the Hydra behind the 2 holy pillars. They pierce its hide with their master-crafted bows. In a pincer attack, the chariot comes from the other side, and eliminates one of the Raptor Knights. With sober determination, the Phoenix Lord leads his guard towards the Hydra. In a more desperate move, King Reti takes his remaining knights into the Raptor Knights. Unfortunately, the desperation combined with the dangerous holy water and raptor teeth leaves the king alone, facing off versus the savage foe. Drawing from the power of the holy water, the Magi strides forward. Gathering overwhelming spiritual power, he unleashes the fury of the Eluin upon the Hydra. And it is no more.
At the end of the turn, the Eluin Elves have surprisingly captured the objective, scoring their first point, though their position looks desperate with the demon loose behind them, the Raptor Knights winning their clash, and no easy way to shut down the horde of repeater crossbows.
2-1 to the Dark Elves. Turn 4 begins with what could be the killer blow for the Eluin. Another Sea Lord strides forward, leading a crazed band of Corsairs in behind the Eluin lines.
With a clap of gigantic wings, the demon swoops onto his favorite playthings, and rear charges the Phoenix Guard, making a mockery of their stoicism, until only the injured Phoenix Lord is left functioning. In the aftermath, the Phoenix Lord limps away from the abominable giant, as it turns its eyes towards the militia spearmen.
In response to the arrival of his worst fears, the Sword Master turns his disciples around. They must ignore the pleas of their allies and move to counter this new threat.
With a gleeful cackle, the sorceress leads her knights into King Reti, and the desperate lord is cut down and trampled, allowing the Raptor Knights to turn to face the chariot.
The Magi attempts to recreate the miracle of his last spell, but ultimately fails.
Resting on his halberd, the Phoenix Lord looks up just in time to see the sickle of a Dread Lord sweeping towards his head.
Without missing a step, the chariot crew swerve around the Raptors, and launch arrows towards the Imperial Guardsmen in a vain attempt to save the Phoenix Lord.
The Sea Lord commanding the Repeater Crossbow Battalion has never been one to miss a chance to capture rare and powerful slaves, Unfortunately for the lone Magi, nothing is rarer than a Magi slave.
With tears in their eyes, the Rocco Collar advance upon the Imperial Guardsmen, but their boasts are not steady and prove ineffectual. As the turn ends, the Corsairs march forward, keeping the Disciples of War out of the important scrummage for the lone objective, while the Militia Spearmen walk forward to contest the objective, keeping the score tight. The last Magi moves forward too, conserving his mana. It will take a miracle for the Eluin Elves to snatch a victory. The scores stay the same, 2-1 to the Dark Elves.
Turn 5. Underestimating the speed of the Eluin chariot, the Sea Lord instructs his repeater crossbowmen to launch a volley, only to be shocked at how little damage they cause.
Knowing it is down to him and his men, the Eluin Prince charges back across the bifurcation, this time into the Imperial Guardsmen. They fight valorously, taking a tithe of blood before falling to the barbed halberds.
The Dread Lord turns his remaining guard to face the oncoming Rocco Collar, but before he can issue a command, a giant shadow crosses over, as the demon dives into the light cavalry, and with a furious swipe of his scythe expunges the cavalry, then returns back to defiling the bifurcation.
The lightning Magi, incensed beyond all reason, unleashes strike after strike upon the demon, who barely notices. On the other hand, the Imperial Guardsmen definitely notice, as the lightning rips through their lines.
The Raptor Knights attempt to wheel about to chase down the swift chariot.
For its part, the chariot now swerves the other way around the repeater crossbow battalion, and nearly brings an end to the Dread Lord and his Imperial Guardsmen.
Furious, the Dread Lord turns his guard towards the Magi.
Knowing they might be the last hope, and that so many have sacrificed themselves to protect them, the bolt thrower crew launch bolt after bolt towards the demon, slightly damaging one of its wings. Understanding he needs to end this threat quickly and get back to the center of the battle, the Weapon Master charges into the Corsairs. His disciples start to carve apart their foe, only for the cunning Sea Lord to use a combination of overwhelming numbers, slave nets and poison, turning the fight around and ending the Disciples of War as a credible threat. Turn 5 ends with a lone Magi, a chariot, and a bolt thrower left for the Eluin Elves. It seems unlikely they will be able to even out the score for a draw. It has been a miracle that they have been able to keep the score static for as long as they have. Turn 6. This time there will be no mistake, and the repeater crossbowmen, now used to the speed of the chariot, easily cut down the horses. With all the pressure in the world on him, but having faith in his power to come through, the lightning Magi turns to the demon and Imperial Guardsmen, lightning crackling in both hands, only to feel a dark and deep foulness from his right. The sorceress is projecting her malice, disrupting the Magi's spells and wounding him in turn. Not to be denied, the repeater bolt thrower crew send bolt after bolt into the mass of the demon, doing real damage and causing the beast to howl in fury. The Dread Lord and his guardsmen have had enough, and stride forward, executing the Magi, as they execute the last of the Eluin hopes. The day goes to the invaders. The holy water spring is defiled and the water source for Kara's Tor is contaminated. Soon they will siege the mighty city, and establish a presence for their overlord on the continent. Unfortunately for the Eluin Emperor, another large empire, this time from the north, has decided to make its move.